Thank you, Daniel, for that wonderful introduction. I am so happy to be here this morning. I am very excited to be speaking with y'all here. And so, welcome to each one of you, and welcome to you online. I'm so glad to have you here as well. And I look forward to getting to know each one of you better. I know some of you for a long time. That song, Speak Life, that song is so powerful. It really coincides with what I'm speaking on today so beautifully. Reverend Jill sent me that song and she said, "Would this fit?" And I said, "Oh my goodness, it's perfect." So what I'm here to speak to you about today is based on the title of my book, Your Words Have Power. And I will talk to you a little bit more about that in a minute. But first, I want to tell you a story. It was February 6th, 1997. And I was lying in my bed looking out the window at the gray sky. And I said, "God, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be here." You see, I had just completed 8 years of schooling to get a 4-year degree in psychology while raising 2 kids as a single mom, while working multiple jobs and taking 2 or 3 classes a semester. And I was tired. I also had been fighting people saying, "Oh, what are you doing going back to school? That's dumb. People like us don't get degrees." But I had proven them wrong. I had my degree. And I also had a mountain of student loan debt, credit cards maxed out, an empty nest, a failed relationship, and what I now understand was situational depression. You know, the kind of depression where you may lay in bed for 18 hours a day, maybe sleeping, maybe not, maybe just sitting in a chair staring out the window. The kind that it's just a dull aching. And so that morning I said, "God, I'm tired. I'm broke. I'm lonely. And I'm scared. And I want to die." Well, I had a breakfast meeting scheduled for that morning. So I got up, I got dressed, and I put on my "I'm fine" face. You know, that face we put on when we're anything but fine? Yep, some of us know it, don't we? Well, I went on to the breakfast meeting, and for about an hour, I felt a little better. I began to feel a little more like myself. And then when I got in my car, that gray cloud came over me again. As I pulled onto Scottsdale Road, it began to drizzle just a little, just enough to get the pavement wet. And so I was flying 50 miles an hour in a 40-mile-an-hour zone right down Scottsdale Road when suddenly I saw a panel truck completely across the lane in front of me. And I put my foot on the brake. And as I did, the thought occurred to me, I could take my foot off just a little and end it all right now. In that moment, I was inspired by something, spirit, God, I call it divine grace. I did not take my foot off that brake. I pressed that brake so hard that as I skid towards that truck, the engine in my car died just as that truck took off in the other direction. I sat there shaking and crying. And a man passed me on the right and gave me a thumbs up. And I thought, in that moment, I recognized the power of my words. Your words have power. So be very, very careful with the words that you choose because you will manifest them. And because of that experience, I named my business Life Choices because I made a life choice, a choice to live. And I'm grateful I did. Now, I'd like to tell you that I rode off into the sunset and everything was perfect after that. And I would be lying because I'm still in this human experience. And I'm grateful that I am. It took a while to get back on my feet, and I did it. And so I'm here today as proof of that. As I said, what I'm going to talk to you about is based on my book, which is also based on spiritual principle. And the title of my book is Your Words Have Power: 4 Guiding Principles to Personal Empowerment Through Conscious Communication. What I'm going to share with you is today is not just theory, it's actually a way of living. And it begins with something that sounds very simple and it's not easy. And that is to show up and be present always and in all ways. That means body, mind, and spirit. Showing up and being present. When we are fully present in the moment, we are in the presence of the divine. We are recognizing that presence operating in us and through us. I want to give you a little definition I found. Practicing the presence is choosing moment by moment to let our thoughts, words, and responses come from truth rather than conditioning. You see, most of us react out of conditioning, out of habit. But when we change our thinking, then we step into presence, then your words change, your choices change. Hopefully, your choices change, your reactions change. And if they don't, then it's simply a good idea, but not really something that we're practicing. When we embody presence, we think from presence, we speak from presence, and we act from presence. And that is alignment. That is personal empowerment because that allows us, when we are in presence, to take personal responsibility for our words, our actions, our behaviors, and our manifestations. You see, the law is always working. It always says yes, whether we're thinking negatively, or thinking and speaking positively. It always says yes. And there are many ways to bring ourselves present. But one of the most powerful ways, I believe, is through one tool that we have available to us every second of our life, and that is our breath. Our breath is the very essence of the divine. It lives and breathes and moves through us. And if we're not breathing, we're not present in our body. If you've ever been with someone when they passed, you know one moment they're there, and then the breath is gone, and their soul is maybe somewhere in the area, but it's not in that body. So, what I'd like to do right now is invite you to join me in taking 3 deep breaths. Let's take it in through the nose and blow it out through the mouth and fill up our diaphragm, fill up our belly. Ready? 1. And again. Wonderful. And one more time. Thank you very much. I appreciate you for participating with me because that helped me to center myself. And our breath helps us manage every bodily function. So it also helps our nervous system to relax. So if we're going to live in presence, the place that it starts is with our listening. That is my second principle of conscious communication. Listen with an open heart and an open mind. It is said that minds are like parachutes. They only function when they're open. So it's important to have an open mind. And that means listening with compassion, listening with empathy, and being fully present. And the heart must be open in order for us to function, in order for us to demonstrate that compassion. So I want to share with you a slide quote from Mark Napo. And the heart is the inlet between the ground of being and our life in the world, between our soul and our actions. The heart is the inlet between the inner and the outer, between the self and the other. The heart is the strongest, most sensitive instrument. That is not just a quote. That is not just a poetic language. That is instructions for life. Opening our heart. There are actually two levels of listening that I want to talk about. And the first one is when we're listening to and interacting with other human beings. And there's ways to be fully present when we're listening. And one of them is to make eye contact. It is said that the eyes are the window of the soul. So when we're looking into their eyes, they're allowing us to look into their soul. When they look in our eyes, we're opening ourselves for them to look into our soul. So practicing eye contact, it's a very, very powerful tool. Um, Holding space for them. Again, this means having compassion, listening to everything that they're saying. There are times when it's appropriate to interrupt if you have a friend who's just keeps going on and on and on. And that is a clue to you that they're not really listening to you. They're not fully present. So there's ways you can help bring them back to the presence. If they're comfortable with it, you can touch them on the arm or on the hand and say, "May I say something now?" Those are ways to bring yourself back to connect. And don't assume. Don't make assumptions. Ask clarifying questions. That shows the individual that's speaking that you are interested in what they have to say. Ask them to expand and elaborate. Can you expand on that a little bit more? These are powerful tools for being an effective listener. And the second way that we listen, or the second level of listening, is listening to the divine. So I have another quotation I would like to share with you. It's titled "The Voice of Truth." The voice of truth speaks to me and through me. The voice of truth guides me and keeps me on the path of a perfect day. I will listen to the inner voice, and it will tell me what to do in my hour of need. I shall hold everything that I ought to know. I shall be told everything that I ought to know when the time of needs arises. And I shall not be misled. The voice of truth cannot lie, but always speaks from on high. Nothing enters but this voice, for it is the voice of God. God speaks to me. Have you felt God speaks to you? The divine speaks to us and through us. I'll give you a couple of examples of this. First of all, I believe that when I put my foot on that brake and I pressed it harder, I believe that the divine spoke to me and said, "Nope, you're not leaving." Or said, "You have a choice. This is your choice. This is your choice point." Sometimes when we're speaking with strangers, or sometimes when I'm in therapy or coaching sessions, I may feel stumped, and I say to the divine, "You got to help me here, because I don't know what to say. I don't know where to go with this." And then I get inspiration, and the words come through me. And I am so grateful for that. When I am fully present, the people that we love the most are the ones that often trigger us the most, right? The ones that we're close to. I have a dear friend who's she's 89 years old. And she and I have been friends for 38 years, very close friends. And sometimes I feel a little irritated or annoyed by something she says or something she does or something that she forgets or something she needs help with. And then the little voice says, "Oh, Nancy, give her some grace. You're going to be 89 one day. So give her some grace." And I so appreciate hearing that, listening to that reminder. Now, I would love to tell you that I always practice listening with an open heart and an open mind, and I would be lying because I'm human. There are times when I don't listen, or there are times when I listen and I ignore it, or there are times when I argue for my own limitations. Have you ever done that? You feel that the divine is calling you to do something, and you say, "Oh, no, not me. I'm not capable of doing that. I don't want to do that. Besides, it would take up so much time, blah, 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 blah." And we argue for our own limitations. So be very conscious of that and give yourself grace. So let me ask you a question. Do you believe that your words have power in prayer? Yeah, we do believe that, don't we? I do. Well, if our words have power in prayer, they have equal power in everything that we say and do. That's why it's very important to choose our words carefully. Um, I'm going to show you the teaching symbol here. We're going to talk a little bit about how that prayer, our words have power. And our words are first cause. Our words are where it all begins. And we speak those words into law. We speak those words into the law that I said earlier, always says yes. And then that law, or the effect, the outcome is the effect of our thoughts and our spoken words. So I have one other quotation it brings me to the third principle of conscious communication, and that is to speak your truth without judging or blaming. So I do have a slide that I want to share with you, a quotation from Ernest Holmes. The title of it is The Witness of Truth. There is a witness within me who knows the truth and who will not let me enter into falsehood. My inner guide keeps me on the pathway of life and directs me at all times to that which is right and best. I shall never be without this witness of the Spirit, for I believe in it. I accept it as the great companion of my soul. The Spirit within me is perfect now. That is allowing the divine to speak through us. And so let's look at where our words start. Our words start, we have a graphic for that. Our words start at the very core of our being. I demonstrate this with these concentric circles because concentric circles create a ripple effect. You know, you put a pebble in the water and it creates a ripple and a ripple. So when experiences or opportunities or something someone says is dropped into our belief system, it triggers thoughts, which trigger words, which trigger feelings, which trigger our words. And then there becomes a feedback loop to that. Our thoughts trigger our feelings, and then our feelings trigger more thoughts, right? And then our thoughts trigger our beliefs, and our beliefs trigger more thoughts. It becomes a feedback loop, just goes round and round. And sometimes, especially in negativity, we get caught in what I call a hamster wheel. It just keeps going round and round and round and round. So we must stop it. We must stop that hamster wheel and ask ourselves, what is the truth of this experience? So that we can then speak our truth about it without judging or blaming. And that means not judging or blaming ourselves or the other person. I want to give you an example of how rapidly this cycle takes place. And I'll do that by sharing a story with you. A few years ago, a friend of mine and I went to an outdoor concert, and the concert was to start at dark. So we got there early, spread our blankets out on the grass, and we were sitting there talking with some people in front of us and people watching. And there was a man and his girlfriend and his son, whom I would assume was about 10 or 11 years old, probably closer to 11. And so we had enjoyed banter with them and talking with them. And then the son says, Dad, I want to go down to the stage. Can I go down to the stage? And we were quite a ways from it. And he said, sure, just be back before dark. Be back before the concert starts. So we continued to visit, and it began to get late, and it began to get dark. Our sun was going down at least, and his son was not back. And I could see the fear and the panic in his face. And I was beginning to get concerned. All of us were. So we agreed to spread out and look for the young man. And this was before the days of cell phones, okay? But we agreed to spread out and look for the young man. And then we came back together, and he wasn't back yet. And my fear began to arise or kept rising, and so did the man's, and I'm sure others too. Then suddenly the young man appeared. And when he did, his father grabbed him by the shoulders and he said, "Where have you been? I'm so angry with you." And I said, stop just a minute. I said, what were you feeling just before he came up? And he said, I was scared. I was scared to death. And I said, then tell him that. And he said, he looked at his son and he said, son, I'm scared. And he started crying. And so did the boy. The boy said, Daddy, I was scared too. And they embraced and hugged each other. You see, there are only two true emotions in our world: love and fear. And when we are not coming from a place of love, we are coming from a place of fear. And that's where he was coming from. And he was able to shift it into love that quick. Underneath all what we call negative emotions is fear. Under everything that we call positive emotions is love. So when you're feeling angry, frustrated, upset, stop and ask yourself, what am I fearing in this moment? And how can I transmute it into love? In that feedback loop, as that feedback loop continues, especially if it's negative, then we begin to build beliefs such as I'm unlovable, I'm not enough, I'm worthless. So we're going to talk about how to change that. Have you heard this phrase, change your thinking, change your life? I'm sure we all have. My license plate, my personalized license plate says CYT, CYL. And people ask me all the time what it is. That is basic cognitive behavioral therapy. And that's exactly what it is. So I love that. So change your thinking. How do we do that? We do that by using I statements, I messages. I believe, I think, I feel. And when we speak our feelings, it is so important to express our feelings because you see, unexpressed feelings, they don't just go away, they go underground and then they begin to fester. And that's how, again, our beliefs, our thoughts and our beliefs just stay in that hamster wheel. Expressing your beliefs as that man had expressed his fear. I mean, expressing your feelings as he expressed his fear to his son, it lowered his level of anxiety and it helped his son to calm down as well because he knew he was loved. So, affirmations are a powerful way to change our thinking and change our life. Using I am statements. Do you know that I am is two of the most powerful words in the English language? I am is another name for God. It's the Bible says that when Moses went up on the mountain and he encountered the burning bush, he said, "Whom shall I say sent me?" And God said, bush said, "I am that I am." So every time we invoke the words I am, we are invoking God, the divine presence. These words that I think, I feel, I believe, they are not just casual statements. They create our human experience. So if our words are so powerful, then there are some things that we must release and let go of. Because, as Reverend Jill said in a recent message, you cannot create a life without by holding on to an old story. You cannot create a new life by holding on to an old story. So we must let go of our stories. We must let go of negative thoughts, negative beliefs, negative feelings. We must release and let go of blame and of regret. These are all things that do not serve us. So my fourth principle of conscious communication is to let go of those things that no longer serve us. When we hold on to regret, we're holding on to unforgiveness. And that doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve the person that we're holding a grudge against. But for us, it's like us taking poison, hoping the other person dies. I have worked with clients who are holding on to grudges from 30, 40 years ago, even holding on to grudges towards people who are deceased. That doesn't help them at all. So letting go and forgiving. And one of the most important things is to forgive ourselves. When we forgive ourselves for our part in things, when we forgive ourselves for those things that we might regret, then forgiving another person becomes so much easier. And the most important thing to learn to let go of is fear. Again, by changing it, transmuting it into love. This is not about being perfect. This is about by moment, word by word, choice by choice, remembering that your words have power. Your words are not describing your life, they are creating your life. Thank you. Let's take this into prayer. One power, one omnipotent, omnipresent, all knowing, all present power. This one power lives, breathes, moves, and has its being in everything that is. It is the highest vibration of all that we are, of everything, of this room, of these people, of the cars driving by on the street. This power and presence lives and breathes always. I know that this presence lives and breathes and moves through me. I know that it guides me in my words and my thoughts as I listen with an open heart and an open mind. And I know that this is true for everyone in this room and everyone within the sound of my voice. I know that the divine operates and speaks through us, even when it may not appear to. And I am grateful. I am so, so very grateful for this knowing. And in this knowing, I simply release these words into the divine action of universal law, for I know law always says yes. And we know this together by saying, and so it is.